YouTube? What's happening? It's your boy DameSmiff, and this evening we are going to discuss the topic of being extremely busy as a entrepreneur, businessman, and especially as a musician. And we're gonna have that conversation by reacting to a really interesting conversation had by a panel of people on an awesome channel called After Hours with AD. Now, before we get into the conversation, if this does interest you, make sure you hit the like button so that way this can show a lot more people what this content is about. And make sure you hit the subscribe button so that way you can always catch my latest video. So before we get into the actual video itself, I kind of want to lay a little bit of context of the conversation, but then I also want to kind of present my perspective on the overarching topic, okay? So a little bit of context. The panel we're going to watch is reacting to another video. So videoception is happening right now. But essentially, they're reacting to a video of where a woman believes that she is married but lives as a single mom. And the reason she says that is because her husband has a job that keeps him very busy. So he doesn't get to come home often and see the family often. But the reason he's doing that is because his job pays very well, right? So in general, the conversation kind of is torn between whether or not that's good enough for a relationship to, maintain the intimacy and the dynamic between, most people in their relationships. And then the other side of it is that whether or not this is what people sign up for when they want high risk with their income and their lifestyle and things like that. Okay. So that's the context. And then I'm going to give a little bit of my opinion on that. So one interesting thing that I've noticed is that when these complaints usually happen, it's usually with a little bit of reason. Like, the woman's not crazy. Like, if she's not seeing her husband for a long time, it's a reasonable complaint, right? The resistance I usually see with people who are in her position is just that she may have a bit of a learning curve to kind of adjust to the lifestyle, right? And so the adjustment is really what she's complaining about, not necessarily the lifestyle. And that's my opinion, right? I could be wrong in that maybe it is specifically the lifestyle she doesn't like. But in my opinion, I think that's what it is in most cases. I think most people just are like, whoa, it's like kind of like a shock. Like for me, I've never left America, but if I were to like live in another country for like 2 years or something, I would have to make some adjustments and get used to some things being different, right? And so I think what happens is the feelings that come with those growing pains or maybe those realities of your lifestyle, when they get placed on social media or on the internet, they get highlighted, right? And so it looks a little bit more extreme than it is. But as I was listening to the panel have this conversation, I did notice that there were very realistic perspectives. Like, nobody was like kind of out of touch. It was just that it just had different opinions on the same thing. So that's why I wanted to bring it to you and bring my own perspective to it, because it was really a learning experience for, I'm sure, people who have no idea what it's like to maybe be with a partner or spouse or husband or wife that has to be away for a long time. But it also brings a good perspective on what you need to be thinking about when you get into relationships like this, because it can be different for whether it's music or whether it could be, a business partner, or it can be a family member that you care about, anything like that. So it's a very interesting thing. And I think it's going to help a lot for musicians, because part of the job as a musician is traveling and contract work and gig work and working in teams and, maintaining families and things like that. So without further ado, let's get into it. We have here After Hours with AD. So I did link the video in the description, and I also did add the timestamp for when I'm actually about to start this, so you don't have to watch the entire stream. But this channel, along with Anton himself, they're really good about clipping everything up. So eventually you'll see a condensed version of this whole stream where you can easily find what I'm about to react to. But all in all, that's for the nerdy people, and we're going to get into a quick reaction here. So let me know in the chat. Let me see if I can pull up the chat here. If you guys can hear me, see me, and everything's good, and we are gonna get it cracking. So again, they've already watched the video. The premise is that this woman says she's married but feels like a single mom, and this is the context of the entire panel.
she labels herself publicly as a married single mother because she is disgusted at the fact that she is married to a professional baseball player who has to travel a lot and is always on the road and doing this and that and so on and so forth, and that she does not get to get help with doing motherly duties and has a traditional situation. I would like to know you guys' opinion of this woman saying that she is.
One other note, I sped it up a little bit because it is a bit of a longer conversation, but I want to try to get through, if not most of this, all of it, so that way we can get the full context of everybody's opinion. It's very, very interesting.
A married single mother to a professional baseball player.
I like I'm not a chick, and I know that it's really hard being a mother absent a father and what all you guys do with kids. But I feel like the money probably makes that like easier. Like maybe like her delegation skills are less than like there's like hired help or you know what I mean. So I don't know. Maybe she needs to talk to somebody like get in a group. But you don't if you have a man of means, you don't have to do it by yourself. You don't have to struggle. Like maybe get a secretary to do the calendar or something because I know these kids' schedules be through the damn roof. But yeah, that's a her problem.
So, Quentin here believes that it's more of an individual thing. Maybe she needs to have some systems in place. I know for me, like when it came to starting out as a musician, that was one of the things I didn't know I needed was that you need systems for like lessons, for personal development and finances and things like that. You need systems in place. Without that, you will just come up to just more problems that systems will solve over and over and over again, and it'll feel overwhelming.
Are we going to beat around the fact that she said she only sees him 2 weeks out the year? So that this is telling me that he don't like that woman. I don't care what kind of schedule he has. He only 2 weeks out the year. That's the real problem. She's a single mother because she is, because he doesn't want to be anywhere around her. She's a walking red flag, all those tattoos, and she sounds like one of those white liberals. And so at the end of the day, that's pretty much her issue. Other than that, she's ungrateful. Like, you have everything a woman could want. So what is the actual problem? Nothing.
You know what? I used to say that people like I used to
So it seems like for Meeca, it's more of a duty. Like you kind of signed up for the role, and you should fulfill your duty type of situation. Again, we skipped the actual video, so we don't know, at least in this particular video, what the lady looks like. You can go find it yourself. But I don't think necessarily her political views are leading her to think this way. I think it's the first point. It's just that she's not getting enough attention and time. And then at the other hand, with the little bit of time, you're not really sure what the intentions are from the husband. So Meekan does have a point in the beginning of her opinion, but I think at the end of it, it's kind of like a little bit too nuanced for it to be. Well, maybe it could fit for this particular woman, but for the overarching general people, I don't think it's really gonna matter. Your tattoos or something like that.
understand when people would say that they're a married single mom, but as she was talking, I was thinking that she needs to reframe that and say that she's the primary caregiver or something like that because she's not single. She doesn't have the same struggles as a single mom. Your life is being financed. Like, so your job is to take care of the children. And like Quentin said, delegate some of that. If you're struggling and this man is out making all this money, work it out. Like, but to call yourself a single mom, you're pretty much saying you have the same struggles as a mother who is single, and you don't. And it's just discounting her husband too. It's like saying he doesn't exist when he does. He's just doing what needs to be done to allow you the privilege of being home with your children and parenting them and mothering them.
I feel like she was more aware.
So before we let Miss Sanchez go, I want to just address Miss Kameni's point. And Miss Kameni is kind of like agreeing between Meeca and Quinton, but she's kind of taken the high road of both opinions in a sense. Like, so she agrees with Quinton in that she should have an ability to delegate a lot of the issues that she's dealing with, which should be utilized through the resources provided to her, right? And then she's also saying that she has a bit of a duty to commit to using her resources in order to delegate, in order to be successful, right? It's kind of like a chicken before the egg conversation, right? So what I've noticed is that between the three of them so far, they have really good advice and opinions, but I think when you apply it, it becomes difficult because of the last part of Meeka's opinion, where that's where it'll start to matter. Like, the woman's personality, maybe her belief system or her upbringing will affect how she looks at delegation, how she looks at the resources she's receiving, and the overarching circumstance and things like that.
by herself than the children, because if they're only seeing their dad 2 times, or what did she say, 2 weeks out of the
Weeks a year.
like that's crazy. And she made it seem like she didn't want to pack them up, like that would be a hassle. So to me, it just seems like she's a selfish person all the way around. If you think about it, because I wouldn't even be worried about myself. I would get a nanny
Yep.
and go on about my business.
Yep. And she looks old enough to where she's probably married to a guy who, like, this is not his first year. It's not his second year. He's been there for a while. So you knew this before you had the kids. And you
And a bit of context too, this lady in the example they're reviewing is a professional baseball player. But to make a statement on Miss Sanchez's point, it kind of, resounds everybody else's point. And she was just given a few more options as far as how she could delegate. So again, I think what I'm noticing here is that everybody, we can see the options. But this is usually what happens when I have conversations with people about this is like, okay, if we can all see the good things, why can't the person in the example, right? And so if I were to relate this back to music, this would be like if you were practicing your instrument every day, but for some reason you couldn't get one particular part of a song right, right? Then that would lead you to think that there's something wrong, but you don't know what, right? And so that could be a situation where you just start to complain or you get frustrated and things like that. And so now we're dealing with a hindsight is 2020 vision kind of situation where like everybody outside of your current situation that you can see all the options ahead in front of you that will be successful, but you can't. So this is usually where my gears start to turn.
anyway, that's on you.
Psyche battle.
Yeah, I agree with everybody. It sounds like more of an estranged marriage than a single mother, because she has options. She just wants it how she wants it. And if you have the option to move with him, single moms can't just move with the father like that. So make it work. Shut up. They always want to tell TikTok.
Yeah,
But that's
some
why
victim
I have that's
parents.
my preface. Like I know it's hard. I know, and like most of this is like what's between her ears.
Nothing.
She probably just ain't built that way. Like most women, like I hear this, all women, I'll figure it out. Like that's how I was like motto. We figure it out, and they.
And I think right there is where pretty much they all agree is that it's gonna be more mental, and they're kind of already saying that like they have to, the woman in their example has to learn systems, but that's what you'll have to do a lot of times in business, and especially as a musician, you're gonna have to find ways to, all right, this part of the song I can't figure out how to play properly. What is it? It can't just be the notes. It's got to be like the fingering of the instrument. It's got to be like the positioning, maybe the breathing. It's got to be getting exhausted by that time. By the time that part comes up to the song, it's got to be something that you're not noticing for you to still have the problem or not have a system to solve for.
When it comes to the kid, like absent a father or not, women always figure it out for the most part, and it seems like she has not done that.
Have you guys ever seen that commercial where the woman is her first baby and she grabs all this unnecessary stuff? She has like all the hand sanitizer, all this stuff. By the second baby, she's just throwing stuff in her and she's grabbing stuff with this hand and things like that. That's normal women. This woman is married to a baseball player. They make egregious amounts of money. If you don't know how to do something, pay somebody to show you how to do it. Like it's access. But that's what gets on my nerves about these types of women. They just want to be victims. They want to talk for whatever reason. So let her talk. She needs a psyche valve because he doesn't want to be there. He probably don't want to be around those kids either because they've been with her half the time.
So usually right here is where I'll start to think, well, if it's a certain type of woman, then that means that we have to understand that this certain type of woman is missing something. Not like she's slow or anything, but it's like her understanding isn't where we want it to be, right? And so that's where you'll want to educate, usually. But when it comes to trying to educate somebody on a problem that they kind of can't see the light at the end of the tunnel up for, then it's very difficult to kind of convince them that there even is a solution. So perhaps Meeca may have more experience with people like this, but I would say usually when I figure out that, let's say to bring it back to music, if I realize like somebody's struggling with like trying to, I don't know, make sales, right? on their record. They're like, oh man, I got a website and I got a bunch of songs out, but I'm not getting any traffic. I would try to figure out what the issue is that's outside of the things that they're good at, right? Because they're not clearly able to notice what is the cause of the problem, right? So instead of just saying like, oh, you're dumb and you can't get it, that's what I would look for.
If you're gonna complain about them, like why keep having them if you're gonna complain about doing it by yourself? Stop it
Because
once.
you need other people to trauma bond with.
Like,
Because what else can
Do
you
y'all-
complain? Oh no, my life is so horrible. Everything is paid for, and I don't have to work. Like she gotta have something.
gee.
Do y'all think that she is unnecessarily complaining? Okay, let me revise the question. Do you guys think that there's an unreasonable complaint because the husband isn't there, or do you think that it's because she has to deal with the kids by herself? Do you think it's that the issue comes from only having to deal with the kids by herself, or because she knows she doesn't have the man in the picture as much as she wants to, even with the money?
Dealing with the kids by
It
herself.
yeah, it sounds like the kids.
I think it's the
either.
man. I think
I
it's
don't
the
think
man.
it's either.
You don't think it's either? Why you don't think it's either?
Because I think they're both crutches for an underlying issue.
So that's interesting. So they're basically trying to figure out if her complaint is coming from the stress of dealing with the children, the stress of missing her husband, and Meeca's suggesting that both of those options are excuses covering up something else. But that's interesting. I actually can't really think of what it may be. I would need more details, I guess.
I don't think I don't think because there's no woman that wants the guy there that much. Because when you're too accessible, you're lame, you're boring, all this other stuff. And then when you're gone all the time, oh, I never see you, right? And so I don't think it's any of those things. And with children, once you get a pattern going and a routine going, that's easy, right? It's not that it's easy, but it's easy because you've now established a pattern. You've now established a routine. That woman has another underlying issue.
Pattern.
I heard that too.
I knew it was coming. Can't help yourself.
A pattern. That's crazy. I love you, Meeca.
No, you don't. Send me the cash app.
Right.
My cash apps all go to Erika.
Oh, my bad. I forgot.
I think it's. I don't know. I have a sneaking suspicion. I would think it's the man. I don't think it has anything with to do because listen, I don't think that the man in most instances is really that participatory, even if he is visible. I don't think he's that participatory in the children's day-to-day lives as far as doing the things like the small little menial details and the things that a woman would do in order to make sure that the children is whatever, right? I think that that's still usually going to be a woman thing. I think she's bitter at the fact that she doesn't see him as often as she wants to see him, regardless of whatever type of lifestyle that she's living. That's what I think.
So, from what I'm hearing, Anton believes that she's more lonely than stressed out. Because usually, especially with monogamous people, there's just one and the other. So that could be a very, very good point where you basically are living whatever lifestyle you're living alone. So,
I don't know, because I think if she didn't have kids and he was still gone, which at some point prior to having the kids, that probably was the case, I think she would just be out shopping or getting her nails done or whatever it is. She would busy herself, but she's not able to do that because she has these children, and she obviously.
So, and that's a great point too. Damn. Okay, so Kim thinks that it's not the man, it's the stress of doing all the chores and things like that. Because if there were no kids, she would be fine doing things alone. That's very interesting. So, I think we'll start to dive deeper into how this is going to work for positioning as a musician, because the thing that's going to stand out really is how it's affecting people who are around you, but what they'll do when it affects you. That's the key thing.
Know how to delegate responsibility.
Or what they'll do when it affects them.
Mm-hmm. May the Lord bless her. May the Lord keep her. May the Lord shine upon her, and then she gets better.
I feel like that was a benediction. You can say, "Amen." We're gonna leave.
That's what they say when church about to be out.
Here's a real question that I have for you guys with regard to her. Do you think that is that a life that y'all would want to live? Like, not saying that it's the ideal life, but is that a life? Not even that y'all would want to live. Is that a life that most women would want?
I think they do until they get in it and they feel that loneliness.
I agree.
I'm not a woman, but I would think that, like, even like Ava's mother, like, I worked a lot and she was like, I'd rather have less money and you be here.
Damn. I'd rather have less money and you be here. I don't even think she know what she's saying when she say that. Damn. So that would be like if you were a musician and your goals were to be touring around the world and things like that. That would earn you a lot of money if you just unless you just did bad deals, of course, but that would get you a good chunk of change. But what he's saying is that he has heard his girlfriend at the time say that she would prefer less money just for them to be around more. So I wonder if many people have done that, if they've like taken a step back at their career to kind of satisfy that. But that's crazy. Now it makes me think too, what does that look like for a musician? So if we already know we're getting a fraction of a penny on streams, we gotta, kill what we eat as far as shows, make our own merch, get returns on all this stuff, right? So what does that look like? Realistically, is that like a music teacher? Is that like what is the business model that's successful, that musicians would call successful, that would satisfy this issue?
That's BS. That is so BS.
Until the table
It came out of her mouth. Like
I told you yesterday, I don't care what a woman tells you. What's in her head is a total two different things.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie, Meeca. She might be 100% on this. I'm not sure because I was told this just this morning. Someone said this same thing this morning. They said whatever she says is not the same thing that's gonna come out of her head or that's inside of her head. And it was basically, even if it's something like, if she says she doesn't get jealous, that's a lie. If she says she's fine, that's a lie.
She's lying through her teeth. The moment you sitting on that couch, that's the face you're gonna get.
Right. I don't think she was lying. I think that she thinks that that's what she wants until it happens. Until he's like, okay, well, I'm home. I'm sitting on the couch. And then it's like, but we don't have money for stuff. So yeah, I think it's just wanting what you don't have.
Some of these women are just unstable creatures. That's it. Because there's absolutely no way you think a man is going to make that much money and sit and look at you all day. And you wouldn't
I
want
think
it.
like for context, like just my normal working was sufficient for us to sustain what we had and we're fine. But like I worked more so we can do more. And she was like, you don't have to do that. Like I don't want the more.
You should have took PTO and took 2 weeks off, and every morning just come
around the
downstairs and sat real close to her on the couch.
With your hands in your pants, like just sitting there.
Smelling like nothing.
So basically, this is why it's good to have these perspectives, because right now we're hearing the perspectives of people who, well, at least for Quinton, he has actually dealt with someone who had this complaint, right? And so what it sounds like is that the complaint is that they were satisfied where they were. They felt no reason to go further. So like usually people with a go-getter attitude or an A-type personalities, as they say, they will try to, do things that are above and beyond most people's expectations just to kind of set a high standard in general. But from what it sounds like, it seems like this person was satisfied. But the issue that most, especially artists, come to is that you don't really have tomorrow promised unless you're just amazing in your investing. Like you just hit a bag and then you just invested like 98% of it and you can just sit down somewhere. But other than that, most people, they don't have a lifestyle where they can just be comfortable and just relax. Like most of us are going to have to, even if you have a business, you're going to be doing more in general than what you expected if you wanted to get at least the nice things in life.
Smelling like nuts. I remember Kim told me that. She's like, nigga, your hands smell like nuts.
Wait, did you say I said that?
Yeah, like years ago. He was like, nigga, your hands smell like nuts. And I was like, dang.
Might have been a different Kim. Don't worry about it.
I remember. I was like, that was rude as fuck.
That sounds like something.
The worst I've been told is that I smell like hot cheese and cologne.
That's not a good thing. Don't tell nobody else.
I know. It's still Stephanie.
That's all right.
Wow.
Oh, that's funny. Anyway, moving on.
Long story short, y'all think that she's ungrateful.
Facts.
Would the majority of women want to be in her position or not?
All of them.
You said what, Meeca?
All of them.
All women want to be in that type of position?
Yes.
Anybody disagree with it?
No one disagrees. That's what I was waiting on.
All right.
I have a different thought.
I was waiting on Carrie to talk. I was like, this is kind of Carrie. I was like,
Carrie, you gonna get a call on her or what?
No, I was waiting for everybody to finish.
Go ahead, Carrie.
I can understand what she was saying from the little part I heard. I know you added that she was starting to say, you know, all the stuff about single moms and all that, but I don't quite know why she's doing it online in that way. Like I could see her saying she didn't realize it would be this, and like I'm just venting. But the way she did it to me did come across as like I'm upset about my life. I'm ungrateful for my situation. So I agree with y'all on that. But
Okay, so that's interesting. So Carrie kind of understands that it doesn't seem like it's venting at this point because, as Anton was saying, there's a little bit more context to the video as far as like maybe why she's making that specific post, but she did say she understands the complaint. That's the key thing.
so understand she filmed that video at the wrong time, I think, because I can relate to feeling that way in a moment, but then you have to kind of dial yourself down and bring reality back at play. So my friend who is a single mother was who told me that I was her married single friend. She was like, you're like my friend who was married and you're a single mother. And I was like, really? She was like, yeah, because it's always just you and your kids. Like your husband is always gone. And that was very much so the case. Now the difference I'm assuming is with her, I'm guessing she knew he was a baseball player when they got together. Like she probably had some idea. I don't know if anything really prepares you for it until you're actually going through it. Even if you're with somebody who's in the military, until they are gone, you don't really know how that's going to feel. So like for me, when I got with my husband, he was in music, but he wasn't touring. He was just doing like a lot of gigs on weekends, stuff like that, local, you know, maybe a few hours away. It wasn't until he got a 3-month gig overseas that I was like, wait, what? And I had just had my son. I had his 2 daughters they were living with us. So I was essentially, it was me and 3 kids and nobody. So
Yeah, so that's kind of the crux right there is the point that we wanted to talk about here. So Carrie's saying in her situation, her husband, as a musician, kind of had what happens with most musicians is that they had a milestone and a level up, or let's say an enhancement in their career. So he went from basically doing probably school gigs, church gigs, local gigs, and things like that. And as she said, like a few hours away. A few hours, honestly, is like 4 or less hours is pretty much a local gig in my eyes, right? But when you start going like, 6-hour drives away and stuff like that, and then you got to start planning it a little differently. Like those are like 2-day stays, weekend stays, and stuff like that, right? But when it comes to touring overseas for 3 months, or even like getting a residence somewhere for like 3, 4, 5, 6 months or something like that, the idea of what you're leaving behind has to be, considered. Because what she was saying was that she had 3 kids, and I think, she had to be responsible for some older children, right? And to do that alone will bring forth all the complaints everybody brought up before, which would be it would be stressful, it'd be lonely, and you need resources to do it. So there's a bit of a balancing act that has to be there, because in this particular example with Carrie, let's say they are making enough money, but in the more common example, musicians don't make that much money, even if they are touring and things like that. Or at least they're not making enough money to where they can just invest in their family directly. And that's just based on, what we're seeing out here. The musicians that can invest in their family usually have multiple ventures going on. It's not just the gig itself, right? And so I can completely see where she's about to go right now already.
And that carried on for years. So there were plenty of times where I'm like, I'm here by myself. Especially, I think the ages of your children play a big role as well, because it's tough just having young kids, even if mom and dad are both there all day long. Like that's just stressful in and of itself. So if you have that happening, it can mentally make you be like, I'm here, he's not, I can't see him. I don't even want to see him. I want a break. And then again, this whole notion of, and he's out there having fun.
And he's out there having fun. So it's not that she's saying anything bad about like having fun. So what's happening, similar to the woman in the first example, is that the idea of the lifestyle is what's negative. The idea of being who they are and fulfilling the position that they're in That's the part that is not truly fulfilling for them. So now you're dealing with an issue of, at least as a musician, you're leaving behind. This is why I said you have to pay attention to what you're leaving behind. You're leaving behind something that may be stressful, that may be lonely, you know. And so I think one of them, either it was Miss Sanchez or Meeca, they suggested traveling with the husband. Maybe Carrie will touch on that too. But the issue that you run into with that is still resources. That cost to just move an entire family to where they need to go and things like that. So again, in these two examples, I'm assuming everybody's making enough resources to do or to commit to the options in front of them. But the common thing that many musicians are going to run into is investing for this moment right here. Because a lot of you plan on, I'm going to write a song or get famous on YouTube or eventually, get signed or something like that. But this problem right here is something many musicians do not invest in.
Hard playing baseball, but he loves baseball. So he's out there. I'm just telling you, like, what can mentally
Yeah,
go
I'm
in
with you.
your head. You know what I'm saying? Like, you enjoy what you're working and getting paid to do, and I'm just here. But you obviously have to talk yourself down off of that cliff and be like, okay, hold on though. He's working. He's away. He doesn't want to be away as much as he is, but this is what it is. I signed up for it, so you got to put logic to it.
And that's one of the main things too, is kind of what I was mentioning before, where if a person is not brought up a certain way or doesn't have certain principles to rely on, they won't be able to talk themselves down, like Harry just said, without help at least, because they'll lean on their understanding. So if, like, let's say for example it's raining, right, and you're trying to play your saxophone, you know that rain is bad for saxophones, but if you have no idea what to do, then you probably just won't play. You just keep it in the case and just not go outside until it's sunny. You see what I'm saying? Instead of maybe raising a tent or something, or maybe playing in a poncho, things that you see saxophonists do when it's raining. But that's kind of what I'm saying. The difference in the one saxophone player who still plays when it's raining and the one that says I'm going to play when it's sunny is that how they have principles to lean on. Like, okay, I have this option to exercise when I need help or if I'm struggling. And then on the other hand, they also have, maybe tools in their toolkit or whatever, just to help them. Like I said, the poncho or something, or a tent to play under. But with what Carrie is saying, yes, great advice. The only issue is, how do you know what to tell yourself when you're talking to yourself? What is the tone you speak to yourself when you're in this moment? Like, when you're lonely, you want to complain and you can't fix it, it's out of your control. What do you lean on in that moment in order to help you? And perhaps Carrie will help us. But I have some things I could give you as a musician, but I want to see what Carrie says first.
You can understand the frustration.
So essentially, she's like Michelle Obama. Oh, you got time to golf? All of that.
I mean, listen, I think it's difficult for any person. I'm gonna say probably more female than a male, but I think it's difficult for any woman to just be them for long periods of time without their man. And then here's the other thing, because Anton, you were like, does Meeca think that it's more I want the man there or just somebody to help with the kids? It's a twisted kind of a thing, because on one hand you do want them here, right? But then when they come here, even though you're frustrated by yourself, you really have your own system happening. Like, you have still figured out how to make your house move without him. So when he comes home, you're expecting it to be like great, but you're kind of like I'm glad you're here, but you're kind of messing up the way I was moving when you weren't here. So now you got it. So it's just a weird dynamic that you really do have to work through it. You really do.
That's interesting. So now she's basically saying the household, at least in this example, it's ran a certain way. So when you insert yourself back into that, let's say for musicians, you go on tour and you're doing your 3, 4, 5 months in London, you come back, you may bring a certain energy to the household that, if not already established, may disrupt how things go. So maybe the kids, they wake up at 8 in the morning or 7 in the morning, they eat breakfast at the front and they're just watching Bluey, but you're used to waking up at 11 or going to the studio, and the studio is really just a microphone in the hotel room you've been practicing in for 90 days, so it's a different energy that's been introduced into the household, which is gonna bring me to this point. Musicians that are established before they go on tour, I believe, do better on tour. Meaning, whether if you're going on tour single or whether you're going on tour married, if you go on tour and you understand what you're leaving behind, you will do better on tour in general. So what I've noticed when it comes to the older musicians that happen to go on tour, they say when they come back and things like that, they spend most of the money on travel, like basically putting your luggage on there, maybe insurance to get all the equipment and crap like that. And if you have way more people and employees and producers and engineers and things like that, you have their equipment and all of the assets and liabilities that they bring. It's very rare that you're going to go on any tour and just bring your instrument and that's all you pay for. There's going to be a lot of cost to moving around, bringing expensive instruments and doing network events and things like that, right? Now, the issue that you're going to have, though, is if you have all your resources in your pocket and then you go out and spend them all in France and then you come back home and you have no resources, there's going to be nothing but issues for you to deal with, right? So it's not really going to make sense for you to go out there, work really hard, and then come back and then just have to restart everything all over from ground zero. So I would suggest, if you're a musician and you're in school, maybe you're in marching band and you're starting to see, getting on the bus going from one school to the other and you're starting to travel, pay attention to like the cost and like how you're moving around, right? So for example, I'll tell you from my personal experience. When I was in college, I went to the first HBCU in America. I'll give you a bonus points and a like if you can put it in the comments what college that is. But when we toured, we went all up and down the East Coast, going to HBCUs and all kinds of schools, right? And after a while, as a student, I barely paid for anything. I maybe paid for like uniform and maybe some food and stuff, right? But after a while, I started to pay attention. I was like, okay, so there's about, let's say like 30, 40, 50 of us people getting on here. All liabilities, we got to sign waivers and things, right? We had 2 tour buses filled with luggage. We had marching band grade A style instruments on these buses. We had 2 drivers. We had staff from the school, right? And uniforms, as well as, along with the marching band equipment, which may have been just like cameras and equipment like that, the literal instruments themselves, as well as all the sheet music that costed money, right? So we didn't even talk about like uniforms, food, lodging and hotel, incidentals, things like that. Maybe like first aid. Maybe somebody needs like any specialty things like a handicap bathroom, hotel room. So that's a little extra, little things like that you don't really think about, right? But as I'm going through all these shows and doing all these events, I stopped thinking about like what notes I'm playing right now. I was like, all right, as I'm standing at attention, I'm looking at the crowd. I'm like, okay, so this stadium that we're standing in here, this got to be like millions of dollars. How much does it cost to clean this and things like that? Like I'm starting to think like that now. So now the venues we're going to make sense, because we're not going to like just some church to perform. No, the places we're going have to kind of make sense for either the marketing of the school, the marketing for the students to get more recruits to the school, or just bring attention to the venue itself. Then it was like, okay, so dang, all the investment we're putting in for the school has to be there for when we go out and tour and bring all of this attention and this money back home to build upon, right? And that clicked instantly. But the issue that I ran into next was convincing the players around me the same thing. Because when you would go into, let's say, a battle of the bands and everybody does really good and it's hype and your parents are yelling and, the dancers are cool and everybody's yelling and you're doing great and you played your notes correctly, when it all is said and done, you still have to shine your instrument, shine your spats, put your uniform back, fold it up and make it look good. You still have to establish yourself. You still have to do that. And it goes, that's the micro level. And then the big level is you going on that tour bus with the entire band, right? So to bring it all full circle, this is the exact same thing you have to do. All of that marching band logic, you have to do that same logic when it comes to your household. So now you can't just not have the resources set up for, let's say, in Carrie's example, 3 children and a woman. Because if you just leave, then you're basically leaving it up to those 3 people, 4 or 5 people, to figure it out on their own. Now, how do you do that? It goes back to what the issue was with the woman in the video. You have to have the principles to lean on. So let's say it's whatever your parents taught you. Let's say if your parents told you, don't steal, it's a good one. Don't do that, right? And then you have to have resources. So a lot of people are not going to like this, but even if as a musician, you're going to have resources, which could be money or it could be assets. So if you are a musician and you're a full-time musician, you're going to want to pack this catalog up to where you can at least eat off of it for a long time, or at least have a lot to market, or you want to pack this catalog with so much value you can do the same thing. On the other hand, you can go into what most musicians are doing today, which is to get into multiple ventures, like business ventures. So before you go on tour, you have merch. Before you go on tour, you have physical merchandise for your music itself. Before you go on tour, you have a website. Before you go on tour, you have all your legal things like your LLC, your tax ID, your EIN, and all these things set up. Before you go on tour, you have things like branding and marketing and logos and stickers and all this cool stuff. So that way, let's say, for example, your girlfriend or whatever is sitting at home and she's bored as hell. It's like day 67 of the tour and she hasn't seen you. Well, this whole time she could be keeping herself occupied with things you have going on with the business. But again, what Meeca was speaking of was that she would have to have the mindset to do the delegation. So this is where usually a lot of people will tell you you would have to train and educate and get people into different modes and mindsets to understand your goals and get on the same page. So there's a bit of give and take when it comes to dealing with the human nature of things. Like, you're not going to be able, like a computer, just turn it on and then she'll just do what you tell her. A lot of it will have to do with being on the same page with what Carrie is saying, like knowing what to tell yourself when you meet these issues and knowing what principles to lean on. So if you don't have these things and you go on tour, you will have this situation. If you do have these things in order, then you will know exactly what to do when this situation occurs. So I pretty much have solved this for specifically musicians. This may be very different if you're like a soldier and you get sent overseas or something like that for 2.5 years. This may be a completely different conversation. But in general, if you're a musician, you need to look at yourself as like a self-sustaining businessman that can either have like a bunch of tendrils and a lot of different resources and ventures, or be so valuable that it makes sense for you to move the way you need to move. But it's going to be case by case, which is why I'm not being super specific. But the key thing is that these issues, from what I'm understanding, come from a lack of principles, meaning like you just don't know what to do when you're sad, upset, confused, and lost, and then not having the resources to act upon whatever things you see in front of you. So if you do want to travel as a family, how the hell are you going to do that and make it make sense?
Carrie, you know what it is? The woman is the homemaker. And that's why I say it's essential to see that, because that is a skill. A lot of women have not been taught it. A lot of women don't know what it is. And we sit here and see women all the time say, "Oh, y'all are not doing anything. Trad wise, y'all just sitting at home." They don't understand that running a household is a real thing. So when you're coming from that whole how our society is, you thought this was going to be free fall. You thought this was going to be easy because everybody's always told you that those women do nothing.
Okay, so it sounds like from Meeka's understanding is that there's a discrepancy between what people think a homemaker is and what a homemaker actually is. So she's saying that the homemaker is pretty much a full-time job. You're doing, I heard one lady, she said it's a 6-figure job to be a homemaker. It pretty much is, if you think about it. Like, you're keeping people alive, you're keeping people clean, you're keeping people safe, and you're keeping people organized in conjunction with a team and organization. So the idea that it's something easy, that has to come from somewhere else. Honestly, it can't come from somewhere that makes a whole lot of sense, and it can't come from a place that has a whole lot of experience.
It's an actual skill to run a household, especially a multi-million dollar household.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would agree with you. I think even if you do, if even if you were raised to see that though, it is different. I think when the husband does not come home for long periods of time. Like I think that that's just a little bit different. But I mean, society does not make it easy. And then on top of that, you have, which I've explained to y'all many a times, that's all that your life becomes. So according to society, you're not even really important. You know what I'm saying? Like you're at home, you're figuring stuff out with your kids. You're not even as important as other women who are boss chicks, moving and shaking, career women. You know, so you're mentally in your head like
Why are you not important?
I feel like I'm working every day. I feel like I'm doing something every day. I feel like this matters. But maybe it doesn't really matter because I'm not doing anything. And then you might have friends who don't understand. Like I don't know her situation, but I know for me,
So that sounds like you kind of will find yourself in a situation where you feel like you're alone and you're the only one dealing with the problems you have, as if there's no other version, right? So I think in situations like this, kind of what I'm saying about principles, this is you want to lean on friends, and friends will help with these principles. Usually you hang with people with similar principles, like, if you don't steal, your friends shouldn't really steal, otherwise you would be hanging with people that steal from you. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's what we would do to solve this one, or this particular issue of like figuring out like that FOMO issue when it comes to what's in between your head.
I didn't have a lot of friends who really understood why one minute I say I can come to your wedding, but then my husband he gets a gig and he has to go, and now it's like I can't. You know, like I've had friendships end because they could not understand why you always flaking out, or you can't do this, or you do this for your family.
That's
You know what I'm
crazy.
saying? So you have all of these things coming. I mean, you got to
But
toughen it out.
that's
You
the
got to
thing.
find the good and praise it and be grateful. You know what I'm saying? Like you have to be able to look on the other side because otherwise you will be bitter. You will. You will make a
But
video
that's the
and
thing.
complain about it.
You just not you, but that woman sat there and explained how important she was, which is the reason why she was complaining.
Well, she's
Outside
explaining
of her
all of
underlying issue, she's very important to what goes on in the house. So if you're that important, what is there to be what is there to be annoyed by, right? Because it's and if this is also something that you love, because you brought up that he's out working but he loves baseball. Well, if you really enjoy being a mother, yeah, everything gets hard sometimes. Everything can have issues, curves, whatever. But if this is something that you love, you'll wake up and do it every day without complaint.
Yeah, and there is a controversial thing about what Meeca just said, because a lot of people feel that they're doing something they don't love in order to protect or serve or, you know, feed or nurture something they do love. So there is a controversial resistant side to what she's saying. Now, this may go right back to what I was saying about being established before you go out as a musician. You may want to, the person who's going to be dealing with the family while you are out touring and things like that, they may have to be a person that loves homemaking, because if they have any desire outside of that, this is where they're going to start to have their heartstrings pulled. It's going to be like, oh, I wanted to have some kind of dream of being the world's greatest fisherman or something like that, right? So if they're trying to be the world's greatest homemaker and you literally put them in position to do so, then they more than likely would be fulfilled if it's a positive experience. Similar to you as a musician, like if I were to put you on stage with your instrument, with music you've practiced, ideally you'll be in the perfect condition to perform. So you would be confident, satisfied, and willing to take on the task.
Yeah, I think that's easier said than done, Meeca. And I mean,
I'm not saying
you're-
that it's
maybe
easy.
you're-
I'm saying that you'll wake up and do it.
No, you will. But there are definitely moments where you're like, what? Like, and it's nonstop. And it doesn't mean you don't love being a mother or you wouldn't do it. But yeah, there's moments where it's like, yo, this is just like for him being out on the road or him being away. He might have moments when he's like, yo, this is a lot, but you still keep doing it. And that's what I'm saying. This is all the narrative you tell yourself, which is why I would agree. Like you it's already going to be hard enough if you become a parent. But if you become a parent and you're married to somebody who is not going to be there a lot and you already know, I would say you're going to have to figure out how to put things into perspective, because the narrative you can start to sell yourself will be all of what she's saying.
She said the narrative you start to sell yourself is what she's been saying. And it's starting to kind of sound like what she's saying is that you do need something to lean on as far as your own principles that help maintain the family. Because the woman in the example, she's upset, negative, and trying to break up the family. But if you wanted to maintain your family and get a positive results, again, you need resources, which are going to be a principle for you to lean on.
Well, it can be all of what she's saying.
A lot of women just need to go play team sports
Just like
If you
team
can find the
sports.
time.
because that's how I look at it as a marriage. Like y'all just you need to learn how to be on a team. Some people have the easier role, some people don't, but everybody plays a part.
I mean, and it's a thing. Like during that time I joined this Facebook group called Wives of Traveling Husbands, and I mean that helped me in and of itself to be grateful because my husband he's gone at probably like 3 months tops at a time, but he's done that plenty of times. But you have some women whose husbands work on the what do you call it, the pipe, whatever, and they're going like 9 months.
The
And
oil
people
rigs.
who are in the military, like people who have not seen their husband for like a year and some change and have had a baby alone, like that's what really helped me to start being like, you know what? It's not as bad as it seems. Let me take this opportunity to get started. I had to tell myself, chill out, you're good. There's so much to be thankful for. Like I had to reposition my thought because I probably was on the road to a little bit of bitterness. Like that has been definitely a topic of heated discussion between my husband and I at plenty of times, especially when my kids were much smaller. So I had to get that in check. I really did.
Wow. She said she actually went through that and had to get it in check. But it kind of explained. She kind of explained what I was saying. Like she found, people with similar experiences, so they probably had some really good advice. And she also found ways to, well, I guess more so found principles and things that she could rely on in order to tell herself. So that's another thing when it comes to like being established before you go out there. Some of us are going out there just hoping to wing it as far as the business we're willing to do and as far as the things we're trying to strive for when it comes to our musicianship. Now, this is where things will get controversial. You will probably lean on things like the genre of music you're playing, maybe who you play with. Some people play at churches, or some people play live jazz gigs or hip hop shows and things like that. Sometimes it won't really matter. What's going to really matter is that you as an individual have these principles in place because, for example, let's say for Carrie's example, she wasn't who she is today. She has maybe different principles or no principles at all. She would still need to do something with the exact same issue. So that's why you can't really rely on outside sources. So like for her, it may have been, she may say it's other things outside of herself, but again, she has to filter out all of the information she's receiving from her community, her network, and her circumstance and filter it through. That's why she's saying what she's saying. Her feelings started to get involved, and then maybe, perhaps the argument started to get heated because you kind of have tunnel vision when you're in the issue, right? But eventually, as she was saying, over time, as she joined groups, she probably started to see more experiences and then witness people either doing worse or better than her and then filter out things that worked. That's the key thing.
So society will tell you that you're missing out, and you're not.
And you feel like you are too. You know what I'm saying? Especially depending on, I came from a black college. I missed homecomings. I'm looking at pictures online. You know what I'm saying? I'm missing weddings. I'm missing birthday parties. Especially once we moved away from Jersey. I'm missing family events. If I go to family events, it's just me and the kids. And then, like you can tell yourself, I'm just missing life. Nothing's important. Which again, y'all, I don't mean to bring up the Bible, but that stuff like that, I wish I had it earlier because to your point, Meeca, I think if I really, 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 really valued what I was doing, I would have been more understanding for my husband, and I would have enjoyed more of the time that I spent. You know what I'm saying?
So she was saying she wishes she had, I guess, what she learned from the Bible to rely on to give her a little bit of clarity in her understanding. So for her, it was the Bible. For other people, it could be something as simple as, just loyalty or duty. For, some people, it could be the overarching goal. So the key thing though is that she had something to lean on to get her through. And when you don't, you kind of just only see the problem. This is the only thing you see is just the issue. That's pretty an amazing experience, particularly for us musicians, because now we can see on an outside, like, yeah, we want to be great, we want to do big things, but like, how does it work, right? We see a lot of our favorite celebrities and musicians and things like that having family troubles, but we never really put the glue together between the dots that we see.
did the best I could, but I definitely think I would have done better. So
That's what's up. I think that that's dope. It's dope.
So yeah, I think that's a good, pretty much well-rounded take on that topic, and I don't think they went any further as far as specifically the musician angle, but that was a really, really good perspective from Carrie. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. And so, if you enjoyed this conversation, make sure you hit the like button so that more people can see this conversation. And if you want to add to the conversation, maybe get a part 2, let me know in the comments. And lastly, of course, hit the subscribe button so that way you can catch the next episode of A Late Night at Dames. But I will see y'all the next time. I'm out. Peace.